welcome back to the SPL, SMITE fans. And since it's October, some people might say trick or treat. Well, I say treat yourself to an upgrade to your chair with this Maxonomic seat that you should pick up. I know Christmas and Thanksgiving, that's when you think about everybody else. Use October as a chance to be selfish. Think about yourself and upgrade your chair. Get into the land of comfort that we all have been enjoying, and make sure that you can enjoy yourself like everybody else. Get an exclusive reward when you order an official SMITE chair. That way you can see in-game just as well as everybody else is seeing out here in the regular world. Now, I am joined here on the desk as we're moving into the rest of the day by Mifflin to help me break down everything that we're about to see happening here with this next set. Now, I know you're excited, Miff, because this set's going to have Obey, and this is one of those ones where Obey might even come in a little bit favored here up against the Renegades. But before we get too much into all of that, this is an important time of the year for all these teams that are down there at the bottom of the standings, Miff. They got to start getting some wins so they can make sure they have the easiest path to winning Worlds.
Yeah, you do not want to be in the bottom two here, and I think that this set is going to be pretty indicative of who is going to end up in the bottom two. Renegades and Obey vying for that last spot. If Obey are able to win this one, they are going to tie up their slash line with United and Renegades, all of them tied for dead last, a three-way tie. But you know, I want to tie it back to something you said on the tail end there, Finch. Did you say you think Obey might be favored here?
I think there's certainly an argument to be made for that one coming into this set, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
is.
Renegades have looked better with variety for sure, but I don't know if I'm ready to say that they look consistent just yet. And I think that I know exactly what I'm going to get for Obey. They're going to be playing through Sino in the jungle and looking for a chance to try and win through their team fight, set up that jungle mid synergy, and see if they can take care of their opposition quickly.
I agree. You know, I don't like watching Renegades for the exact same reason that a lot of teams love watching Renegades, and it's because that they've got some of the highest top end and potentially the lowest bottom end. But Obey, on the other hand, is kind of similar in that their top end might be lower than the best that Renegades is going to bring, but they have a certain level of consistency that I think that the Renegades don't. So we've got, I think, maybe a statistical better shot that Obey are going to be able to bring just enough to maybe edge out a win against the Renegades here today.
I think Obey legitimately do have a good shot. They're going to come into this one motivated for sure. I mean, they thought that the better team lost when they were playing the best teams in the league, right? So when they played them against Renegades, yeah, SSG, I mean, yeah, I don't know about all that one, but that's how they felt about it. So what I'm saying here for this next one is that up against Renegades, surely they must be coming in with a ton of confidence, right? And feeling as though this is one that they're meant to win. If they consider themselves a team that can beat Ghost and SSG and Sanguine when they're on their stuff, then they're going to need to be able to win this one here up against Renegades, absolutely. And Miff, I don't think that's going to be the easiest thing in the world for what it's worth. Renegades, while they're not consistent, we know what their high end looks like with the way that they've been able to play after they've gotten some of their adjustments. Variety is on this team now here with them as well, and Bear's been starting to play like vintage Bear. I think this is a team that if they bring 100% certainly could give Obey some trouble.
Crazy that you forgot to bring up the X factor, the reason that Renegades wins their games, and the reason any team wins their games. It's going to be the jungler Lasbra. If Lasbra's having a good day, that means that the Renegades as a whole are going to be able to perform a lot better. He is intrinsically tied to the success of this team. Some teams can thrive without the use of their jungler. Some of them can win despite a poor performance. Sanguine comes to mind. Sometimes Panatom struggles a little bit. But I think Renegades is a team that is completely reliant out of their jungler. If he's not doing well, I don't think they stand a chance.
I think that you're right, but I think there is another more important X factor on this team, and I think that is Venenu, man. This guy shows up for them sometimes. Looks like one of the very best players we have in the middle lane role when he's on picks, like sometimes you see him on the Morgan or some of these other aggressive picks where he could dictate the pace. He gave Herwin a run for his money with this Giannis performance that you're looking at here now. I know what you're going to say. The mid laner is enabled by their jungler. Okay, all right. But I think Venenu is a big X factor for this team as well.
He is, and you bring up the Morgan, but in that game, I don't know if you're able to remember exactly who he was turning into on cooldown. It was Ratatasker. It was the jungler. He was turning into a jungler. The best thing a mid laner could be is another jungler. Clearly, I'm speaking in jest right now. Ben, absolutely a beast out of the center of the map, and I think he's got a very versatile god pool as well. I think recently we've really started to see it expanded out towards that Morgan, towards the Yanis, even Thoth, occasionally going for some of the healers as well. It's impossible to ban this guy out, which I think is why we don't see teams really try and target him out too often in the P's and B's.
Yeah, I wonder if they're underestimating this guy because he is sort of the drummer of this group, the bassist, the one that can fade into the shadows, but is doing a lot to maintain their rhythm as we move to those picks and bans for game number 1. So I think you gotta make sure that you're giving Vin his due respect, or else he could take over a game from you at any given moment. Now we are into those bans. It looks like Renegades will be in that first pick position. Obey will have the chance to respond with that final 10th pick, and perhaps maybe find some counters that can give Renegades some trouble.
Yeah, if I'm Obey right now, I'm looking to target out potentially the support or even trying to target out Lazra, make sure that he's not able to get on some of his comfort picks. Obey should be looking to ban out things like Pele, and it seems like Renegades are going to start us off strong with exactly that, some targeted bans. The first one going towards Wolfie, that signature Raw pick no longer on the table for Obey. I'll be interested to see how these P's and B's play out. I'm expecting a lot of emphasis on the support picks. Awesome Jake 408 and Inbound have very niche god pools, but they also have a bit of overlap in what they like to play.
Yeah, they both do like these aggressive picks, right? Sobek is one that comes to mind that should be highly valued between these two supports. Potentially even the Hercules is another that could be played by both of these gods. And the Fafnir, I suppose, falls into that category too, though I don't know that I would have necessarily been worried about banning it. But Obey stripped that one away. We know it's part of Jake's comfort zone, so if you're going to limit his god pool, you probably got to go for that one too.
Yeah, so far 3 bans coming through. Now Renegade's going to the Arachne as well. Not a single meta ban, and it's going to continue that trend as Ratatasker getting taken off the table by Obey. These guys are going for each other's necks. That's what I'm seeing right now. Yeah, so whatever you need. You want your Moja? Take it. You're not playing Ratatasker. I've seen what you can do on it. Both teams going for the target bans. I like it a lot. It's a lot of personality in the P's and B's.
Kuzenbo was another one that I thought that his support was going to be a focus, could also be getting banned out, and that is perhaps the most meta ban of the ones that we have seen so far. A lot of teams valuing that Kuzenbo support role now. So at this point, a lot of, like you said, targets up is taken away, but there's so much value to still be had in terms of Rom
like
Cupid
all of it?
both being open, Yamoja still being open, right? The Amaterasu still being open. The Nemesis even gets banned. So at this point, you could essentially play all of the things you consider never being allowed to be played because they've only gone for these more niche bans at this point. I don't know if you want Yamoja in this slot, or Ama, or Rom, or Cupid, but Renegades have their pick.
Look, I'm going to go ahead and make a blanket statement. I'm not going to make any friends saying it. Renegades and Obey, neither one of them have shown me the capability of performing on Persephone or Yamoja at all. These guys struggle on those picks, so I wouldn't be surprised if it just gets bypassed, if we don't even see a Yamoja come through or Persephone. Sobek getting picked up first overall by the Renegades is interesting. I saw your face light up there, and I tend to agree. When there's so many other meta picks available, gods like Rom, like Cupid, that need to be addressed early on, it surprises me that they want to go to the Sobek.
Yeah, it's to the point where I think banning the Fafnir and the Kuzenbo almost, they don't even make a whole lot of sense if Sobek's still out there, right? I mean, just pick that. I mean, it's about as good as it gets on the board roll right about now. So it's to the point where I'm saying you're not stripping enough away to where these picks make a whole lot of sense. That is if Jake is unbeatable on this Fafnir, to the contrary, right? So, I mean, I understand they are limiting these pools to some extent, but it's so much good stuff left that is to the point where I don't know that you've taken enough away to justify it. It's Sobek Persephone as the first 2 picks here for Renegades, though Rob Tsukiyomi is not as if they took nothing in response. Those are obviously excellent choices too.
Yeah, both teams coming away with some strong picks here. Persephone is going to get picked up, and followed by an Erlang Shen as well. That's almost a secondary ban targeted towards Sino. Erlang likely going to the jungle, Persephone obviously going to mid. So far, Renegades came out ahead. I'm surprised that we see them not pick up the Cupid there, the next best hunter after Rom gets selected. Likely going to get banned out here by Obey in the second phase. Yeah. Renegade's going to have to fall down to the next best tier. We've been seeing Jingwei get picked up a little bit. We know that Barracuda loves that pick, but it is going to be the Poseidon from Obey here. An interesting choice, a great way to deal with a lot of the engagement potential from Renegades. Erlang Shen turns into a ferret and decides to run you down. All of a sudden, he's back in his mortal human form because he walks through a cripple. Sobek can't go through it either. This is a strong pick, and the mobility should be impactful to help him maneuver around the map.
And a signature pick for Wolfie. I mean, he's been playing the Poseidon as long as I've been casting, longer than that, right? This is something that he's very, very comfortable on, so I'm not surprised he comes back to it. There's some memes around the Kraken secures, I think, for this guy, but certainly his Poseidon is up to snuff. Now, this Cupid has been banned exactly as we expect to. I wonder if they'll also ban away the Heimdall. That is Zapman's go-to in this role, but maybe not for Bera. Maybe a Jing Wei or a Soul Band to be a little bit more targeted.
You got it.
I got there eventually. I just got to say all the Hunters, and eventually I'll lock it.
No, you're right to highlight it. Barracuda in particular has been loving this pick. He's not a huge fan of the Rom Cupid meta, I'm pretty sure, after watching his podcast. Aggro's not here, so I guess I'll plug it this time around. The Backliners podcast, you can check out every Sunday night. He loves this Jingwei pick. So it makes sense to me that Obear decided to target out here, and now the Yemoja ban coming through. I mean, Renegades, we saw now Obey got through 3 picks. If they wanted Yemoja, they would have had Yemoja. I think they could have dedicated that ban elsewhere. Whereas Ymir, that's something that I associate with Obey. Inbound loves this pick. He wants to be able to separate the map. And against the 2 picks on the side of Renegades that can't get through the wall, the Sobek and the Erlang Shen, it's going to be a great way to separate these team fights and make it much harder. If 9 turns Blessing comes through, trying to taunt your backline, if you don't get Ymir with it, he can immediately separate you from your target.
Yeah, it's to the point where I almost do wonder if it's a small misplay to ban the Emoji instead of the Ymir with how much Inbound likes to play that pick. It has struggled on the Emoji in the past. But I trust Bobby to have cleaned that one up. You don't want to give him the Emoji. Make him show that the Ymir can work on a high-risk, high-reward god that you've got a chance to punish. So I'm right there with Renegades on this. But now I'm starting to think about this engage for Renegades with Guan Yu and Sobek, and that is scary. But I don't love Hou Yi right now. Hou Yi is my favorite hunter. Let me put that out there first. But I don't know if I love him right now. His clear feels a bit slow compared to everyone else. He does not have the CC immune ult. How do you like this guy's ability to compete right now?
I think that Hou Yi has some of the best 1v1 potential once the supports rotate out of lane. Sure, he struggles with clear, and he's going to struggle mightily in the early phase of the duo lane when it's 2 versus 2, which might be one of the most important phases of the game, with Guardians and Warriors now in the support role, leaning so much so towards pressure that when you have essentially a sitting Duck Hunter like Hou Yi who doesn't really mesh well with that meta, it's going to make it very hard to thrive in that phase. But once he is left alone with his opposition, the ability to fight one-on-one with his stun, his slow, the knock up from his jump as well, just everything that he has going for him, it makes it very hard to fight this pick. And into Rob in particular, he could have a very strong matchup. That rollout is very easy to interrupt with Hou Yi's own jump.
Yeah, or even maybe find a stun in the middle of it if you already have the mark on him. There's some option for Hou Yi to get some lockdown. His all-in potential, I think, is really what we're kind of dancing around here, is what's strong between the ultimate, the stun, and you taking all that extra damage from him when you have that mark on him. So he might have to worry about that, Will Wowie, going up against Bera, if that ends up being the case. But I'm worried that up until then, the Ram Amir should certainly have the pressure one would think in terms of their clear, as opposed to the Sobek Hou Yi. But that's not the only areas that we have to look at for this matchup. I mean, what is Obey's plan for these fights to try and get them started with this Amir Wukong? It feels like they're reliant on a wall.
Yeah, it feels almost as if they're looking for a counter-engage matchup. If they're able to engage deep in the back, have Sun Wukong dive with a stun, Ymir follows it up with that wall to try and separate the team fight just a little bit, that could be one way in. But Obey is a little bit one note in how they're going to engage these team fights. We might be looking at a counterpunch matchup against the counterpunch team.
We'll see which team strikes first. Renegades versus Obey. Let's start game 1.
Thank you, Finch and Miff, when it is Dolson and Goremizer on the call for Renegades versus Obey. And Gore, at least standings-wise, this one closer than our first matchup of the day. Of course, Doug observing for us. You in chat, make sure you let us know which way you're leaning on this one. Gore, admittedly, this one, I think we all, outside of, who was it, maybe Finch and in chat, I can't remember exactly.
Chat themselves.
They all went Renegades, but the rest of us leaned Obey in this one.
Yeah, and honestly, it's just because I feel just lately they've looked a little bit better, and I think they're a little more consistent than what we've seen out of Renegades. I said this earlier, but when you look at Renegades, they have a very high ceiling. I mean, they could easily take games. They have, in fact, taken Ghost Gaming down in a 2-0, and there it comes with the caveat that didn't look like a typical Ghost set, but either way, one of them was a 61-minute game. You can't tell me they didn't earn the win, right? And Obey has also pushed a lot of those top teams to the limit, but it just feels like the ceiling and floor gap for Renegades. Their best and their lowest is much further apart, and so you never know who you're going to get on the day. Whereas Obey, especially with this look, I think are going to be coming in a lot more comfortable. Inbound has looked phenomenal in comparison to what he was doing in Phase 1 in the last few weeks, so I think they've done nothing but get better here in Phase 2. I'm excited to see what they have, though, because, you know, I love throwing out all of that, and then I look over and I'm like, oh yeah, by the way, Renegades are on a 3-set loss streak, and Obey are on a 4-set loss streak. So no matter what, someone's loss streak is ending, but it's not like recently they've really been doing intrinsically better in terms of wins.
Well, Renegades pull the 61% to 39% favor of the chat here. This one extra important standings-wise as well. If Obey win here, they will officially catch up to the Renegades. We know Lasbro, we know he loves these level 2 ganks. You got to expect it at some point. Unfortunately, Inbound so tanky. What a wall to allow the Ymir to walk away, but Jake is there. Blink on forward. The body blocks there as well. And the pluck on the other end. What a play from Jake to counterplay the big play from Inbound. First blood to Renegades.
That was good from everybody. Everybody gets a medal there. I loved it. Even though you end up dying, I think that's great showcasing of what this Ymir can do and what I can expect, or at least I'm going to be expecting out of Inbound as the game goes on. But also, it goes to show where Jake's mind is at and where the Renegade's mind is at. And like you said, you have to expect these ganks from Lasbro early on, and the best place, and so far what's proven to be maybe the easiest place to get that pressure, has been over here in the duo lane. Get rid of Inbound first, then start to get Bara ahead. Get this Huyi comfortable, let him start making rotations, let Jake go over to mid without having to worry about Bara. Everything's smooth sailing from there.
And what a way for the Renegades to start. Now you need to start to snowball that a little bit. A small lead over in the long lane for Jake. And Barracuda, of course, sprint popped for Inbound, so that relic missing, but blink for Jake as well. So some of the engage may be mitigated for the next minute or so, at least over here in the long lane. Though they do still have that chance, and just some minor trades back and forth here. Barracuda's going to have to learn that he's going to be eating a good bit of Ymir damage there, and it's how the remainder of that poke goes that likely dictates things one or the other. The wall is up, but Barracuda has the final shot score. This one is long and drawn out, but Barracuda stays in it long enough, and Jake does as well. The stun is there, but wow, he has the beads. One final auto might have gotten it done from Barra or Jake, but it's one kill nonetheless, and now Barracuda has two.
I'm not one to call a lane done, but I think this is like at the point where there's enough of a lead for the Renegades, enough control over here for the Renegades. They can, you know, lay off the gas for a little bit if they need to. Or at least I should say, I don't expect Obey to be getting as aggressive over there in the duo lane. Unless we start to see Sino pay attention over here, you're more often than not, or more likely, I should say, to see Jake start to rotate and roam, because I think he's now in a better position. He has no mana right now, so he's probably going to back. But then once he comes back from that, maybe help out Bara, find one more kill. Would not hurt to have over there, since they've only shut down the support so far. Getting something on the Wowie would be nice. But they're comfortable. I mean, they aren't really in danger. They've been dictating the pace of the lane and turning things on its head, even though Ymir theoretically has a little bit more damage early on.
And you know, the Renegades, through some of that, already showing what we know their draft has, which is engage, whether it's Lasbro, Variety, you know, Jake, Venenu from range, hell, even Barracuda could find himself a stun. And then some of the concern then lays on Obey and sort of what their draft might look to do in some of these team fights. Obviously, you know, Inbound has some lockdown. Wolfie as well with a potentially big Kraken is there for follow-up. But Gore, I don't know if I'm overextending here, but they don't have the same engage potential I don't think that the Renegades have.
No, not yet. I think late game we're going to see that not really change. Like, obviously, Sobek, I think, is going to be able to set up a little bit better and more consistently. That pluck is always going to be there for you. But Ymir Freeze and Ymir Walls late game, when everyone's in the jungle, are a lot more consistent for setup than what you're going to have in lane.
Point.
So it might level out a little bit more. It's always going to be in favor of Jake, though. But there's the other, I want to say maybe counterplay that comes into that, right? Sobek displaces himself, all of a sudden you kill Sobek if he doesn't get the pluck. Sometimes even if he does get the pluck, now he's in the middle of your team. So Obey might be able to kind of turn like sharks and chew down on him and lock him up, although it looks like Renegades are going to stay on the offensive.
Well, Ducky has to retreat as Jake, Variety, and Lasbro have all made their way over towards the blue buff. A very proactive play there from the Renegades to try to give Variety just a little bit of an extra advantage over there in the short lane. Seems like Renegades, even just through a small bits and pieces, whether it's shredding away that blue buff there, they seem to be the ones, Renegades are, that are playing a little bit more proactively right now. Obey Alliance maybe a little bit too reactive. There definitely something can change there. Gore, we haven't really gotten to talk about this mid lane all that much. Obviously, just a few minutes into this game, most of the focus over on the long lane. Wolfie on this Poseidon, though. I mean, this guy, you look at the Raw and how he's loved that so much. Poseidon, something we have seen, but maybe not quite as much as now the tried and true Thoth, the tried and true Raw. What do you think of the pick here for Wolfie?
Well, originally, I see Poseidon, I like seeing Poseidon, and that just tends to go with the fact that we don't get to see him too often. I was looking it up while they were going through with it, and specifically honing in on the Poseidon. The Obey's played it 3 times. They've lost with it 3 times. It has not got them a win just yet. I don't think it's Wolfie's fault, though, and that's one of those things. It's a deceiving stat, right? Because just because the Poseidon has lost every game they played with it, it does have that weight of, oh no, like you said, right? Oh man, why did we lock this in? But I don't think it revolves around him. He brings a lot of good, secure, really easy lane clear early on, but the Whirlpool, and this is like a weird, maybe kind of minutia detail inside the kit. In the middle of a team fight with a full gauge, that Whirlpool can be one of the most oppressive abilities to be hit by. Easy to set up your Kraken if you have it, and if you really need the setup with the rest of your team, good freezes. But also going to be able to keep Sino or Wowie or Ducky locked onto somebody so that they won't be able to escape as easily. That extra sustained damage coming elsewhere from Obey should be able to get picked up from that. So even though it is a 100% loss rate here for Obey on the Poseidon, I still have high hopes for it.
Well, look, you have to sing the praises of why it could potentially be good, and I think that potential is absolutely there for Wolfie, especially if he's able to follow up on some decent setup. Blue buff respawned. That means Renegades are going to return their way over towards the right side of the jungle, but 4 members of Obey are here as an answer. The wall just off the mark, and Jake is able to make his way under the waters. Ducky, though, moving a bit further forward, has to take up to the cloud there to keep himself alive, and he will crash back down to earth. Simple numbers game there. Gore Obey had 1 more, and likely will take the blue buff as well.
Being able to bounce back and attack like that, pretty solid, and they force Jake's ult, which I think, again, is just a thread to follow through all of this. Little wins like that are always going to be helpful. Unfortunately, if you end up losing on, well, your red buff, then all of a sudden it starts to fall apart. Renegades, you get aggressive in one area and you don't get it. This is very similar isn't a word, similar to what I would say is like what Ghost and Sanguine have been doing lately, right? Where, early on, they'll put a lot of pressure on you, and sometimes that pressure is not going to 100% stick, right? But they don't need it to. If they pressure out your blue buff and lose that, but pressure out your red buff and get it, they're still at a net positive. You lose a buff at the end of the day just because you were able to defend one. It's the the positive spin on it. But realistically, you have to look at where the gold and the experience end up. Right now, it's not too vast of a difference. There's a level right now between Wowie and Barracuda, and it's probably closer to half, 3/4 of a level, more than it is an actual full level. And otherwise, they're 700, 800 gold apart. They're not really taking this far ahead, but Renegades have the tendencies that are at least letting them get a little more aggressive.
Yeah, I mean, Barracuda just with that 1 level lead, you can see he's got the full Ninja Tabi built out. Wowie just in the tier 2 boots there. A few more stacks on his Devourer's Gauntlet as well. So that's really where those 2 kills transition themselves over into. Variety. Bit of interesting pathing here. Will make his way in behind Wolfie there. Cavalry charge now under the tower. Has the stun, but Wolfie able to pop a pot and walk himself away. If nothing else, Variety has forced the mid laner to go back to base.
But I will, maybe biggest important question, why though? I mean, you come in, Lasberg gets a good 2-man taunt, they're going to keep the fight going, but Variety doesn't have this.
Oh, but Sino right back into the fight, and Ducky slams down. Kill locked in onto Lasberg. There's a pluck as well, as Venenu pulls back one for the Renegades now. And that might be all she wrote here for this fight. Both junglers go down.
I don't know, it kind of felt useless from both teams. Like, it felt like a big nothing fight. You come in and, Variety all-ins, dumps his kit into Wolfie. There's no follow-up. Nobody seemed to be nearby. Maybe there were some comms from Laz or Venenu that said they were going to get aggressive, but nobody did, so he just ended up kind of sitting under the tower for no reason. And then both the junglers, I mean, continuing that fight, maybe you get a pick from Obey, and I think that's a good spot for them. And Renegades being able to pull one back is good for them, but it just feels like it was no big pressure on winning that fight or losing that fight, except maybe the red buff, maybe another invade could come through from Renegades if they come out swimmingly ahead. But even then, it's a little questionable, I think, in my eyes, because as of right now, they don't have enough of a lead where, you know, Variety making a rotation like that is going to be big. This is the kind of play I'd rather see. Don't dive the tier 1 looking for a, you know, small pick onto Wolfie. Go for the Pyromancer. Start up the Gold Fury. Force Obey to take these fights outside of their tower range.
Yep. That's a great call from the Renegades as well. It's just Jake and Lasbra that make their way to the Pyro. They need a little extra time, but map pressure at least bought them that. Here's the answer, though, from Obey, and it's Sino deep in the jungle. 1 level lead over Lasbra and about a half health bar of a lead, at least in this engagement as well. Wall up, blink out. Lasbra will survive here, so it's inbound now. A bit of the driving force. Freeze, CC immuned out by Variety as the cavalry charge will usher him away from this engagement. Obey Alliance, a lot of man-hours being put into this jungle invade and nothing to show for it.
That's always the downside, right? Renegades, again, not 100% of what you throw in terms of invading is always going to end up coming back and beneficial to you, but at least the Renegades were able to walk away with some red buffs sprinkled in here or there, or maybe a gank sprinkled in here or there. A lot of the fighting, like, as much as it is, you know, turning into a little bit of poke here and there in the jungle, kind of slowed down, at least in terms of lethality here. And I'm kind of curious as to where the pressure went. I thought it would kind of revolve around Jake, and I think that's why the duo lane slowed down. But I was kind of surprised. I guess it's just because of Venenu and Persephone maybe being a little bit better as the game goes on than she's going to be sitting right now at level 13. But the damage numbers that she has should still be pretty solid. Plus Lasbra should still be in the area. I think they could look for more picks. I just feel like they've been a little more complacent with where their aggression's going.
Well, it was the red buff being looked at. I believe Wolfie dropped it down, just waiting for Renegades to evacuate the area, and Wolfie will pick up the red buff here. And you know, kind of on the topic of where the pressure has been placed, admittedly, I'm surprised that most of it, if not all of it, outside of the one mid lane collapse from Variety, has been on the right-hand side of the map, when early on in the game, you fed Barracuda a couple of kills. Sino is going to go CC immune just for a moment. Well-timed. Lasbra cannot taunt him back in. Piercing Moonlight sends him back and forth a few more times. It seems like the same story but a different day. Sino just peeks his head in. Wolfie there on the chase as well, and nothing on the end of it.
Jake wants to set something up, although he's kind of hung out to dry here. Variety's rotating in, say is Vin, but he's pretty deep on his own right now.
Inbound throws up the wall, but immediately tears it down. Plugged back in, beads down. Kraken won't find much onto Jake. Variety chasing Wolfie down. No more beads to get rid of the stun there. Will Variety fall nonetheless, though? Heals himself up. A couple members of Obey chasing him down, but nobody in behind him. Snipes ringing down from Wowie, and up to the sky goes Ducky. A big stun onto Variety sets him up, but the heal keeps him alive for a little bit longer. Ducky does end up finding that kill. It's a 1-for-1, but Barracuda has pushed down this left-hand tower.
Yeah, there's not many ways out of that one when you dive that deep. I think ultimately maybe coming out worthwhile for Renegades just because they get rid of Wolfie, which I think is just going to be a little more worth than Variety, especially since there's not going to be a big team fight. Plus, Barra gets a tier 1 over on left, so they get some map pressure out of all of it at the same time. And with that, it usually translates to more pressure around the Gold Fury. Right now, there's a lot of Obey wards that are hanging out around there, but I think because that tower is gone, especially if they can get the one in mid, Renegades should be able to move in and start to get a huge lead built off of that. But it is still a little shaky. You look at the clear, or maybe more accurately, the secure that comes down, and if Wolfie's Kraken is up, any objective, I'm a little scared about trying to take because he's going to be able to come in, press 4, and potentially steal it at any given time. Venenu won't quite have the same burst that comes through, but that's where Barra's Suns kind of level the playing field. They're not immediate bursts that steal it, but it's a nice big chunk of sustained damage for you.
Right.
So it will be able to lean things a little more in your favor. It looks like they want to start it up. This is more just a bait to try and get somebody on Obey to make a mistake.
Well, finally, the fruits of the long lane labor for the Renegades starting to kind of come to fruition here. Barracuda now a 2-level lead, the largest he's had in this game. Gord, do you think that objective secure, maybe advantage that Obey Alliance has, plays into the fact that the Renegades haven't put more pressure over here onto this Gold Fury despite Barracuda having that 2-0 kill lead just a couple minutes in?
Yeah, I think so, because, I mean, even look at the mid laners. There's a level lead here for Venenu. It's just when there's a Kraken or something like it on the other side, Raw Beam comes through, Thoth, Final Judgment, anything that's this big burst, Scylla, I'm a Monster, another good example, you don't really want to start up a Gold Fury if you know they're around. If you have good ward coverage, good zoning, or you just straight up killed them, then you know you're pretty safe. Or you can look at your burn. Right now, they're burning it faster than anybody on Obey can reply.
And it was sort of the zoning factor that you brought up that the Renegades had. Variety holding off 3 members of Obey from even checking in that side of the jungle. Always a threat with Wowie and his snipes, but now the threat is on inbound. Jake has plucked him back in, grasping death from Venenu, rings on through, but the Kraken doesn't get much in this fight either. Chasing on in is Variety. He will get the kill onto inbound, but it's Obey Alliance ahead in the kill department. Wolfie has picked up one on the back end of things here. Venenu has to burn the Aegis. Caltrops goes down, but Ducky, plenty of dive opportunity, and he capitalizes as Venenu falls once more.
They could honestly continue getting aggressive if they want to. Ducky's in a perfect position. Barra's under half health. They're going to keep getting aggressive. That Whirlpool coming in handy to make sure Barra goes down.
Had to use the Aegis and fell nonetheless. What a turnaround from Obey. Renegades have been driving this entire game, and maybe that goes back to what the desk was talking about, where we know that the Renegades have all of this engage, but maybe the re-engage, sort of the disengage and then re-engage on the fight, is just a little bit better for Obey, because the Renegades were the ones who started that up, but Obey Alliance finished it.
There's still a 1,200 gold lead there for Renegades, but when you win Gold Fury for free, there's not really a big reason to fight afterward. I mean, all of the objectives that you would have been fighting over, or that you needed to fight over, were gone. I feel like there was a pick potential, but the minute Variety decided to go under that tier 1, it started to fall apart, right? Hey, you killed off inbound, or you got him low, you forced his ult, maybe you back off here. Then they just re-engaged to try and get the kill there for Renegades, or I guess continued their engage, doubled down on the fact that they wanted to be aggressive, and it started to slip out of their hands, and then all of a sudden you lose literally everyone but Jake. Sino, as much as the ult I think looks kind of ridiculous on spectator, it's fun to see there for Tsukiyomi as he bounces between everybody that he hits. It still brings a lot of damage, and I think that just kind of caught everyone on Renegades off guard. And now it's given Obey just a way straight back into this fight. Again, the gold lead's still there for Renegades, but knowing that you can win a fight is definitely going to bolster Obey's confidence.
Well, it probably feels a little awkward, I think, for both teams here. The top of the scoreboard better for Obey. Might get changed here with Barracuda having to take to the sky. He'll jump down onto Wowie, and Wowie picks up that kill for free. Sino well-timed gank there. Will bring right back to even the Wowie Barracuda discrepancy over in that XP department. Gore, massive spike in that previous fight for Ducky as well on the Sun Wukong. 4-0-1 now, a 2-level lead over Variety. And it's weird because it seems, again, like Variety has been the one trying to open up a lot of these fights for the Renegades, but Ducky, I think, has done well in biding his time and engaging when the time is right for the Sun Wukong, and he's grabbed himself 4 kills as a result.
Almost every time Ducky has played Wukong, it's looked great for Obey, right? And it's almost like up there with Wowie and his Cupid play early on, where even though they would lose a lot on it, and maybe their win-loss stats didn't look that great, his KD on Cupid looked phenomenal. He personally performed really well, and I think that's what we're getting out of Ducky. I think he is also a really good representative, in my mind, for why this pick can be one of the best solo laners. He holds his own on it. Again, even in a time when no one else was picking the Wukong, he was picking it up a little bit before everyone and still making it look good for the team there. I think he is a consistent form for them. And again, that's something that I think Obey have. The Renegades just don't seem to have as often, which is this consistency. If you put Ducky on Wukong, you know most of the time he's going to find success, and he's going to be able to translate that success, ideally, to the rest of the team.
Yeah, that's the way things have been going here. Looking like he'll be the first one to reach level 20. Maybe not surprising. Big bit of money spending there for Obey. Everyone goes back to base, starts to make their way back out. Wolfie completes the Charon's coin, so we'll look for a little bit of extra stacking there. And Gore, you know, some of the Krakens maybe haven't quite hit the mark in what Wolfie has been looking for. Picked up 1 kill in a skirmish just a few moments ago. You get some of that percent pen online now. It's all about that Kraken placement because he's hit a big power spike.
Yeah, especially like you said, having that percent pin means that it's going to be a little bit easier to burn through someone like Variety and Jake, which, guess what? They're the ones who have been going in on him maybe more often than not. So getting the big turnaround on that, a big spike of damage through to them, means that whether it's him, Sino, maybe Wowie, depending on the rotations, someone is going to be able to pick up the kill onto the tanks. And honestly, Variety has been going in with almost reckless abandon. Like, it feels like he does not care whether or not he's going to walk out alive. And that makes it a little easier, I think, for Wolfie and Sino to just turn a fight around. This Oni Fury is going to be very important, specifically for how Renegades not only manage picking up the objective if they're able to, but the fight afterward. If they clean it up like the Gold Fury but then die, it's really all for naught.
Well, finally, something to fight for spawns here. Been a lot of farm skirmishing up to this point. Inbound, still waiting on his wall to come back up, and now the freeze. Fury pulled back, locked in by the Renegades. Kraken off the mark this time from Wolfie out of the mid lane. Cannot secure the objective here. Ultimates traded back and forth by both of the supports, but look at the dive onto the back line. Venenu has to run away here. Sino's only hit one with his ultimate, but locking in a couple.
Oh, good.
Is Venenu with his ult. Taunts back in from Variety. Look at the splash damage from the Renegades, and they've turned around so much of this damage, but Obey doing the same as well. They've outlasted the Renegades engage and are now pouring damage in to the RNG side.
And that's really that Ox form. Once again, Ducky, the knockups, the control he brings, sets him up. But everybody's a little bit low. The sustain from Venenu and really from Variety coming in big for the Renegades here to keep them in this fight.
What a chaotic fight that was. Every single active used by Obey. Renegades not far behind there. Wowie's going to get caught out here. One more kill from Barracuda. 4-2-1 now on the Ho Yi, so a 2-level lead. One player for each side reaches level 20. Gore, that was maybe messy in all of the right ways. I mean, pure chaos there in that fight. And it looked like for a moment the Renegades had enough damage to kind of put the cap on it, but once again, we see the sort of slow backpedal from Obey, and then the re-engage, and I think you talked about some of those late fight whirlpools. I think maybe made a big difference there for Wolfie as well.
I mean, being able to help keep him alive, maybe on the board, and can set up some of the damage they had. Unfortunately, they just didn't have the secure
what a call
that came through. And again, Variety's bringing in sustain. It's something that you maybe wouldn't have to deal with otherwise. Era using that mark to its best ability. Sees through walls in a way, and now is looking to burn down Ducky. And like you said, like calls like this, what Renegades have been doing around the Gold Fury, the Oni Fury, now the Fire Giant, is just to bait Obey into a bad position.
Renegades have not been second-guessing seemingly any of the decisions they've made so far. Variety might have to, though, as he will get walled off from the rest of his team. Pluck back in, leaves inbound where he's at, but a double freeze keeps him alive. There's a Kraken, a little bit of chunk damage on a couple members of the Renegades. Venenu is going to get locked in here by Sino. Easy kill for the jungler. Ah, but Venenu, he's found a couple on the back line of the fight. Lasbrook gets one as well. Down goes inbound. And you've only lost your Persephone. Looks like Wowie will fall as well. Venenu with the triple kill. 3 out of 4 kills in this fight.
He got all 3 of those in his passive or dead. He was not alive, technically, when he got a triple kill. That is what Persephone can bring, that literally no other god can into the game. I think well played by Vin, a really good ult from him as well. Something that is really hit or miss when we watch Persephone, but really solid lockdown from them. And again, the sustain I think Variety is bringing helps them stay alive. Kraken connects, but it's just on the edges, so there's maybe not as much damage that Wolfie is going to be able to bring. Renegades get that fight in almost the perfect manner for themselves to get this lead, and it is now a substantial lead. Even though a lot of those fights were going back and forth early on, they've got themselves 8,000 gold in their pocket, plus the Fire Giant on 4 out of the 5 members. Tier 2 towers are going to start disappearing. They should jump over the 70k mark in the blink of an eye, and that is the best spot for them to be in here, because it's been a little questionable. I mean, it goes back to the conversation we've had in SMITE for years, which is, you know, do you all in on a bad call? Or would you rather have a team that doesn't listen on the good calls but also doesn't listen on the bad calls, or one that all-ins no matter what it is, if it's a good or a bad call? And it feels like they are kind of, like you said, all in on everything they do.
Regardless,
whether it's going to be beneficial to them, they're going in for it. And I think ultimately it has come out positive.
They baited in Ducky early there, who took almost all of his health and damage, and from that point on, a lopsided fight for the Renegades. And maybe the scary thing that comes out of that is we figured Obey in the jungle would maybe have slightly better fights just through, maybe that's where the Kraken gets its most value in the close-knit target. That's where Inbound can find big walls, big stuns. Inbound had 2 stunned down, but there was no Kraken follow-up, and vice versa. There was a Kraken that had a couple people locked in there for the Renegades, but no immediate follow-up from Inbound or anyone else either. So definitely something Obey have to consider moving forward here. As the towers do end up falling, Gore, you have to look at Obey's Phoenix defense and maybe how confident you're feeling in the squad.
I mean, I like it, honestly. I think whenever you have something like the Ymir and a Poseidon on the side, it's going to be good for a defense, although that might be tested right here.
Yeah, Phoenix, no way. It's a tier 2 tower that we're defending against here. Awesome Jake, the only one who has to burn his ultimate, but a little bit more of the health bar missing from Inbound. That is big, though, especially with Jake usually being the first one to dash on in and look for a pluck. Now no lurking in the waters. It's kind of a get-out-of-jail-free card should he overextend.
Yeah, missing CC immunity, definitely going to end up coming back to bite him. Also has Thorns, not Shell, so, you know, Shell maybe comes through, blocks a little bit of damage, but realistically it would only hurt Wowie, maybe a little bit of Sino, but the Thorns, at least towards Sino and Wolfie, more often than not, we're trying to deal him. And Wowie, everybody, any attack that comes through is going to be a little bit. But like you said, without that CC immunity, it's a little scary trying to go all in, but they get what they came for, which is getting that tier 2. It shows that Obey aren't afraid to fight, which it gives me hope, I think, more around their Phoenix defense and showcases why it can be strong, but it also showcases that Renegades understand what they're going into, and I think that is maybe going to help break out the pillars that are holding up Obey for these last few Phoenix fights.
Well, it's been a tough game for the long lane of Obey Alliance, and that started early. Inbound still at level 16. Wowie not level 20 yet, 26 minutes into the game. Jake almost beating him to that mark. 0-0-10 on the Sobek. Maybe, Gore, we're starting to see a little bit of why this Sobek has been prioritized over so much else in this pick ban phase. And then they also get the Persephone. I mean, that's a pick ban question, I guess, but definitely something worth looking at maybe later on. It's a 2-3 split here. Lasbo and Variety make their way under the mid lane Phoenix. Ducky, Sino there for a little bit of peel as well, but maybe an advantage for Obey, a bit quicker on the rotations over to the long lane, and Jake once again has to preemptively burn the ult.
I mean, it's fine, though, because like you said, they've been doing really well with it, and he's 0-10, so I don't think they're worried about him dying anytime soon, because he hasn't done it yet, and it's 27 minutes into the game. It's also a good pick for them. I mean, you had kind of highlighted it, that it seems to be treating them well, and they do go into it very often. He's won 6 of the 8 games that the Renegades have played him in. And realistically, what we've seen, I want to say just historically this year, has really been if Jake is having a good game, then he will be damned if the Renegades will not win, right? Like, he is going to drag you clawing and screaming to a win if that's what it takes sometimes. And we've seen him do it. I think there have been more obvious forms of it in, like, there was a Fafnir game, maybe a Cerberus game at some point earlier this year, where it felt like nobody on Renegades was getting anything done but Jake, and they end up winning it. And it is just because he is able to have that impact. And it is what, you know, Variety is bringing as well. I mean, 2, 2, and 7, both of them being part of either 10 or 9 of the 12 kills. They've been a big portion of these fights.
Well, wouldn't you guess it, another pluck from Jake connects here, and from range, Venenu will connect on the roots from his ultimate as well. Venenu able to walk away from this one for the moment. Aegis keeps him alive, but he got a triple kill dead last time. Maybe move back in instead. Barracuda gets one onto Ducky. Down goes Inbound as well. That was where the opening was for the Renegades, and it worked out this time around. Fire Giant just respawns on top of that. Could be another big swing for RNG.
And you have to look at, I mean, 0-6 right now for Inbound. You know, as much as this Ymir has been better for them, it's definitely not hitting all the right marks this game. And it started off on the wrong foot. I think it's continued on the wrong foot since then. He's trying to set up his team. He's got good walls, good freezes, but they just don't have the return damage. Unfortunately, locking himself in place, specifically in the ult, just makes it easier for Venenu, for Lasber, and for Barra to dump their damage into him, or for Variety to come up, strip his protections using the Talu Assault, and then everybody can dump their damage into him. And so 1 kill, I guess technically 2 kills that come out there, open up that Fire Giant, that Pyromancer, and I'm feeling a lot less confident. Yeah, they're respawning, but that Phoenix defense is a lot shakier now that the Renegades seem to know what they need to isolate in order to set themselves up above Obey.
It seems like tough timing on a couple of the actives as well. Sprint and Frenzy, while you're being engaged upon, might work out, but at least not in these last few fights. Obey Alliance have been on the back foot despite some of the aggressive actives locked in from Inbound here. Bit of a different look, though. Renegades largely unsuccessful in their Phoenix Sieges before, but now no pesky tier 2 or tier 1 towers to deal with, so this one the most straightforward push maybe we'll see from the Renegades. Leave Lasbra over in the mid lane, admittedly low on the damage charts as Lasbra. He's got 6,000 here, almost 30 minutes into the game, but he's definitely been present and good on a few of those 9 turns blessings. Jake wanders his way in, though, by the right side. Phoenix lurking in the waters. Wowie has just been dove on in the backline. Suns come crashing down. Ducky has found Venenu here. No Aegis to keep you alive. This time Lasbra's there on the peel. Sino's gotten one onto Jake, though. The support falls for the Renegades first. This time around, inbound just short on the stun. Barracuda, you walk back in. Nobody else is there for you, and Wolfie locks in the kill.
Well, there's that Phoenix defense in action, right? Whirlpool, especially around this area, it's just so big in the lane that it's difficult to get away from that amount of damage. It pulls you in. But I also think there was just maybe an overcommit. They were shredding that Phoenix almost in the blink of an eye. If Barra or Lasbra at that point are able to get a few more autos, and that right Phoenix is gone. And I think that's kind of where they got, I want to say, tunneled into. They noticed how much they were able to do there and end up maybe overcommitting to the Phoenix, leaving themselves in an odd position. Barra even turning around to go back in, maybe a little questionable there, but either way, I guess if you're going to die, you're going to die. You might as well go standing up in some form or fashion. Make it make sense either way. They still have a 14k gold lead, right? And that's, I think, where the advantage comes. It is throwable. Then, like, make no mistake.
Right.
It is something that you can still lose the game with, but it is something where if you run in, you lose 2 people around a Phoenix, you're not crying over it. Especially now, you know, I'll look towards maybe the next Fire Giant, because they only have a minute and a half left on this buff. We'll have to see what they do with it. But the next one's going to be enhanced, which means it's going to be a lot easier to ignore the minion wave. You can just walk in because the backdoor protections won't mean anything to you with the enhanced Fire Giant. So it will create, I think, more opportunities for the Renegades to just get aggressive blanket statement into Obey instead of having to rely around all these conditionals. Where are our minions? What are our cooldowns and things like that? They will still have to worry about a lot of the team fight portion, but they won't have to worry about the map state as much.
Gore, you know, if we're kind of just zooming out and how we got here, I've loved what the carries for the Renegades have done this game, both on top of the damage charts. And look at the discrepancy between Venenu and Wolfie on the Poseidon. You're talking about a 9,000 gold differential. This Poseidon, 3, 2, and 4, I mean, if you're strictly looking at KDA, he's been present in these fights. 7 out of the 11 kills he's participated in. Maybe not the highest damage numbers that you would expect out of that mid laner. Venenu on this Persephone has just been controlling things for the Renegades.
Yeah, I mean, being able to be a huge portion of it, even when dead, I think is important. Although that last one didn't go the way they wanted. Now Lasbra, he's looking to lock some people down.
He taunts a couple back in. Sino uses his ultimate here, but this 2-on-2, the Renegades are winning, except maybe it's a 3v2 with Obey Alliance having the Phoenix, but Lasbra gets the kill on Ducky nonetheless. Check in over on the left-hand side, and that Phoenix will fall to a similar fate as well. Wasn't much of a defense put in on the left side. Jake obviously took a good bit of damage, but Gore with somewhat ease and a kill. The Renegades lock in the left and middle Phoenixes.
And the reason that right side Phoenix defense looked so good for them was because of Ducky. Ducky was part of the reason he was able to get to the backline, disrupt them, create 2 fronts for a fight there for Renegades to have to deal with the last time they tried to push into this Phoenix. There, he was the first one to fall. They found it, honestly, pretty easily, being able to lock him down. His ult now up makes it a little more difficult to kill someone like Ducky. But that is the big key. I think getting rid of Ducky or inbound at the beginning of the fight makes it so much easier. They lose a significant portion of their backline pressure onto someone like Barra or Venenu. They also lose pretty much any of the control they would have. Almost all of the CC that I can think of that's going to come through as hard CC is realistically going to be coming from Ducky or inbound, and as long as they're not around, you don't have to worry about the freeze, you don't have to worry about the wall, the Tiger Stun, the Ox Knock-Up, the attack speed slow, and just regular slow that this Wukong's going to bring, and it gives you a little bit more free form to kind of flow into the fight with.
This is the most important fight brewing for Obey Alliance for sure. Enhanced Fire Giant cleanly over to the Renegades would likely just mean game over, so this is one Obey have to step up for and make some sort of an attempt at with only 1 Phoenix left standing. If Renegades can buy their time here, the Fire Minions on the left side and in the mid lane will force somebody from Obey Alliance to go back. That's maybe why we start to see Obey Alliance working their way a little bit further forward. They realize they might need to find this engagement now. Variety walled in, stunned down by inbound, but nobody there from Obey, and they'll back themselves away.
That seems to be a consistent statement, although now Ducky, maybe too deep. That ult getting forced out soon means that it should be easy to burn him down in a second.
He didn't get the memo that the rest of the team was backing away. Inbound uses his ultimate, a split fight here, but Wolfie falls despite the Kraken being sent away. Now Wowie has to disengage, but Lasbro's got the damage. He's got the kill. Barracuda's got one as well. Everyone getting involved. It's a double for the 408 Ducky. Last one alive. Gore, minions pouring down the mid lane. Minions pouring in the left. Renegades likely just won.
Yeah, that should be GG. Even Variety teleported forward for them onto a ward. I don't know when they placed that. It must have been during the last attack, but he's going to be able to teleport forward just to get in there a little bit faster with the minions. But everything about that, I think, goes to what Renegades want, which is if Ducky isn't in the fight to separate them and cause some damage into the back, then there's not really anything that they can do about it. Ducky was, I think, the biggest portion of the fights Obey won, being able to sit on someone like Barra, sit on someone like Venenu, and force them to only focus on him. The minute that ult came out, you know, the beginning of the fight, it all felt like it was going to go downhill.
And you know, some of the worries that we had with this Renegades draft, not about their draft, but we knew that they were going to be able to engage. We were wondering how sort of the counter-engage was going to look for Obey. This one felt good for the Renegades. You know, they were just kind of driving what they wanted early on in this game. Game 1 over to the Renegades. Quick break, and we'll be right into Game 2.
Welcome back to the SPL SMITE fans. Renegades able to find the win over Obey Alliance here in game number 1. And a lot of it started from the very beginning of this game. Pressure in the duo lane for Barracuda and Jake up against Inbound and Wowie. And they're able to start using that pressure to impact other sides of the map. I got Mifflin still here with me on the desk, though. And Miff, that's one area, the duo, where things went well. But it felt like Renegades had pressure coming from a lot of spots. What was it you noticed in this game that gave Renegades the edge?
Yeah, you're right to highlight the duo lane because that is where it gets started. Despite what we said in the P's and B's, we thought that Huyi was going to struggle at least a little bit, but not when Barracuda's playing like he was. But outside of just Barra's raw performance on this pick, oh, what a sick play, by the way, from Jake. Going for the blink, immediately body block, and then the pluck. Like, that's so sick. But I also thought that Ben, in particular, looks incredibly improved on this Persephone pick. He was landing his ultimates consistently, Bone Rush consistently. There was a point in this game where he goes into a team fight, he's the first person to die on the Renegades, and he gets a triple kill post-mortem because that's just what Persephone brings. And it just felt like Obey didn't really have a way that they wanted to engage these fights consistently. Sometimes they were going for fights that just weren't working out, or they weren't fighting over anything in particular. And every single time, Renegades got the better end of it.
They did, man. The Renegades had the tools necessary. I thought Lasbro played really well on this Erlong Shen, for what it's worth, in that mid-game. And remember, there was an early fight in this game where Ducky and Variety both rotated into the fight. And even though Ducky had initially more value, Variety's later on started looking better for them with this Guan Yu and was able to set up for a lot of good stuff. And as I said, Laspra was a big part of this too. You don't lose a lot of games with Jake's going 2-1-13 on Sobek either. That's pretty nuts that he was able to go undying for the most part, except for the one, and set up so much for this team. This looks like Renegades playing well. And maybe not playing well. There were a lot of stuff in this game, Mifflin, to me that felt like maybe it didn't have sort of the cohesive or clean nature we were used to, but Renegade was able to win out, even if that was the way the game was going.
Yeah, the only time I really thought that Renegades were kind of on different pictures as a team was when Variety was going for some of these solo dives where he just hops on Epona, goes deep into the back line or into a tower alone, and just kind of dies. But luckily he drags Obey out of position and sets up for the rest of Renegades pretty well in some of those engagements. But it's not the cleanest playstyle from either team there. I think that we can expect a lot more in Game 2. And we have to remember that P's and B's in Game 1 were very interesting. It was essentially 6 target bans coming through immediately instead of addressing the meta. So I think that they've learned a lot, both teams, of what is going to get prioritized when the favorites are banned out. And if anything, I think Renegades learned that if Obey wanted Yamoja, they would go towards Yamoja. So, I mean, Bobby wasn't an issue on this Emir going 0-7. But if they want to, they could decide to ban that one out. And then where's Bobby going to go from there?
It was the opposite. He was the source of a lot of the early pressure there for Renegades, was getting those kills into Bobby. Let's move into those picks and bans then for game number 2. You highlighted how interesting those first ban phases were. I mean, Yamoja made it all the way around to the second round of bans, I believe, and then Renegades thought, let's ban it. and also see if we can try and limit some more of this God pool. And as you highlighted, maybe they don't even need to worry about that. Some of the things that did make it through that obviously got to think about, the Sobek was top picked by Renegades, and Jake looked excellent on it. The Persephone from Venenu was obviously not. He was outputting so much damage there as well. So some of the ones that I think are a little bit more traditionally highly valued deserve to be contested in this matchup, and we'll see if those get banned a little bit earlier.
Yeah, as far as I'm concerned, Obey's misplaying if they let Persephone through here. And that's not something I've said about anyone banning against the Renegades until today. It was just now that Ben proved to me that he is finally comfortable on this pick, and now it's an absolute threat that needs to be addressed in the future. I haven't seen the exact same from Yamoja, from Awesome Jake, or Inbound, so I don't think we really have to worry about that pick going forward. But so far, we're looking at largely the same. A bunch of targeted bans coming through here. Renegades targeting out the Ra and the Arachne, targeting Wolfie and Sino in turn. Ratatasker getting banned out by Obey, a direct shot at Lasbra. I'm thinking we're going to see some adjustments potentially in the picks, maybe not the bans.
Yeah, I'm surprised that Obey would take this second pick here again. They like the option to potentially counter pick and to get those 2 in a row after the first pick goes away. Now already we're seeing our first adjustment though. Lasbra's Erlong Shen from Game 1 has been banned away. Obey take that away in their second ban slot. So now at least Lasbra going to go somewhere else in the jungle. He won't be able to play the Ratatosker. He won't have this Erlong Shen. There's still a lot of other strong meta picks, but Lasbra has looked best on these early game assassins. Even Pele comes to mind for me in that category. So maybe he can fall back to that pick or something of that provides similar value, because he likes to get involved right away with his patented cringe ganks, as you like to call them.
Yeah, I mean, I like to call them that because they are that. They're cringy ganks, and he did it in that last game as well. Rotates in at level 3, shuts down the duo lane while they're still level 2. But this is a nice adjustment from Obey. Don't allow Lazar to be comfortable on that Erlang. Make sure that that Persephone gets addressed immediately on. And now we're going to see whether or not Renegades have been working on the Emoja as they have been the Persephone, but instead, go back to the Sobek. Awesome Jake looks phenomenal on this pick. A huge support diff in Game 1. Why not run it back?
I like this a lot too. Obey having to ban away Lasbra and Venenu's picks from last games don't have a chance to make adjustments towards this Sobek, so it does get to go to Awesome Jake again. Meanwhile, they continue to ban some targets towards both Sino and Wolfie by taking away the Ra and the Arachne, and then just a general Kuzenbo ban, but you definitely do want to limit what Inbound can play, so that gets to affect that too. So this puts Renegades in a pretty good spot. Tsukiyomi goes the other way for Obey. I do think that Sino looked good on this. They're actually going to grab the same 2 top picks, the Rom for Wowie and the Tsukiyomi. And Renegades now have to come up with some adjustments. They can't go right to this Persephone, so they got to get something else valuable for Venenu in this slot, and looks like it's going to be the Habwa. I mean, this could be jungle too, but I don't know. That doesn't really feel like Lasbra to me. I think this might be for Ven.
Yeah, I'm thinking it's likely for Ven as well, and it's got some decent counter matchups. Kusari Gamma is going to be very hard to land with Water Spout available, or even just a Crushing Wave. That Guan Yu likely going to Variety in the Soul, and he absolutely loves this pick. But here's something I've noticed about Sino. It seems like every single week he comes in with his new flavor of the week pick. Sometimes it's the Arachne, sometimes it's the Nike, this week it's the Tsukiyomi, and then he will run that pick until it finally gets banned out. Someone's going to eventually ban it, and then he's going to pick his next one. He's going to run it as long as he can. He almost never tries to make an adjustment mid-set, so it doesn't surprise me that we see him going towards the Tsukiyomi here. But this Thoth pickup from Obey, a pick that's been having a bit of a resurgence recently, I'm not sure how well it's going to fit into Wolfie's playstyle, especially with this Tsukiyomi. Not really going to have much peel coming out of your jungler here, but it's a lot of damage, and it's got a decent matchup in a Hebo. You can at least poke him out in mid.
Well, in a lot of ways, he's just better than Ra, which is one of Wolfie's key picks, right? I mean, he has that same follow-up with the Searing Pain, more charge up for that big damage, but if they're lining that CC up properly, then it should work, even if they have to fire it a bit early. Has more safety with the dash than Ra does as well, though obviously doesn't provide that same healing and buff that Ra does off that 3. So I kind of like this one here for him, and they're going to take this opportunity to start going towards Ven. They do not think this Hebo is for the mid, because they're banning away this Morrigan. Maybe they think the Hebo is like a flex, and that if too much gets banned, they can take it away, but they're making sure this Morrigan doesn't end up in Ven's hands.
Yeah, I mean, it's smart to hedge your bets there a little bit, but I would be surprised if Obey don't try and target out the jungle with this next ban, and it is going to be Nemesis coming through here.
Splitting the difference.
I would prefer to see Pele, or maybe even a Thanatos, just this early game pressure, Robin, something like that, just so you can't have Lasbra running the map from level 3 onward. But instead it is going to be Nemesis. I think it might have even been a little bit nicer to have that Nemesis get picked up, just because Tsukiyomi has a fantastic counter matchup into her, being able to disarm. If she can't shield the stun, it will immediately knock it off and do a ton of damage as well. But So far, good P's and B's from both teams. I think Renegades may have come out just ever so slightly ahead here because they're playing to their strengths. Variety on a comfort pick, Jake on a comfort pick. Whereas Obey, as far as comfort picks go, I think it's really only this ROM for Wowie.
Well, Renegades with their ban take away the Wukong away from Ducky over there, which I think is smart. That Wukong was doing well for them. And they're going to ban the emoji again, so they'll give Inbound the chance to take this Amir once more if he wants it this time around, where the Sobek, the Kuz, and Bo all take off the table, the emoji as well. So he might end up dropping down to it, might even grab the Hercules in this slot if he wants to get aggressive. But Renegades have some chance to provide us some clarity with their next pick too. If they do pick up an Assassin, we know for sure that Hobwaw's going into the middle lane, and we won't have to worry about that one. And then we still need to see what it is they want to get for Barracuda. Really, no attention's been paid to him, so if he wants to go right to that Jing Wei this time around, he can.
He can. This Fafnir pick, man, throwing me for an absolute loop. We know that Inbound loves Ymir. Sure, he had a bad performance in Game 1, but this is a better draft for Ymir to get picked into. Guan Yu, if he goes into the ultimate, he has a very hard time turning. If you juke it out, Ymir can separate it with the wall. Sobek, separate with the wall. Hebo, Crushing Wave, that doesn't go through walls. There's so many things that he can immediately counter out with just one ability that I'm surprised he's not willing to go back to that comfort pick. But speaking of a little bit of spice, the Barabog coming through, I think that's what we all agreed to call it there, the Chernokuda. I like Barabog more. I like this pick. The global is going to help him maneuver throughout the map. He's got decent counter matchups. If Fafnir transforms near him, my man can just hide inside a wall until his team gets there. It's good for a counter dive as well. I think this could definitely work out.
I think so too. The Chernokuda very, very strong. Now, I know that Inbound, he had a clip going around recently, I don't see what the issue is there, Miff, where he seemed to think that the Chernobog was at the very least not very fun to lane with. I don't know if that's the same thing as thinking it's a trouble pick or a bad pick, but we'll get our chance to see how he does up against it, and this set could be aggressive as well once it has some items online, though I don't know if this necessarily feels like Lasbra to me. I mean, it is something that can get in there and mix it up a little bit, but not necessarily someone that gets involved right from minute 3, though it certainly can have some cringe cakes. And King Arthur, talk about resurgences, you mentioned that earlier with Thoth. This god is continually getting picked, and I think he is back to stay. This guy is just as scary as he always was.
Yeah, with Glad Shield getting that nerf, King Arthur really fell off the face of the planet, but with Stone Gaia getting buffed recently, it kind of makes up for that sustain, gives you decent matchups there, and now he's still the absolute lane bully that he's always been. His ultimate is always up, if not the empowered version, the weaker one, which is going to set up for ganks incredibly well. But I think you're right to highlight this set for Renegades. I'm worried about how well he's going to be able to get involved. It doesn't scream Lazarus to me either. It's not that exact same playstyle. Sure, it's burst damage, and he's got a similar level of mobility, but it's not. It doesn't play out like the Pele. It's not that exact same, like, just hold W key and work it out. It's a very mechanically demanding god as well. Renegades are lacking a little bit this time in terms of frontline, at least compared to Game 1. We'll see how that pans out.
Even curves out a little bit differently. Renegade's going to be reliant, I think, on this Guan Yu to get him started, but how will Obey bounce back? Let's find out here in Game 2.
Well, here's the bad news, Gormizer. The desk is wrong about 2 things. One, it's Venenu on set in the mid lane, not the Hebo. Lazarus will be playing the Hebo out of the jungle. And it's never going to get called Barabog again. I hate it, and I never want to hear it. So that's the other thing they may be wrong about. I want to know what your thoughts are, though, Gore, on this set out of the mid lane. I was for sure it was Hebo mid set jungle, but it's the opposite.
I would have absolutely agreed with you just because of the history, I think, of these players. But at the same time, you know, I'm going to bring up maybe not the best comparison, but Paul as an example, who was playing set mid a few times. Maybe that's something that Venenu has seen and decided to try and emulate for himself here. And I think it works well with the Hebo. Again, it's all in on damage. It's going to be interesting to see how it handles a Thoth, though. I think the clear on the side of Obey is definitely going to go that way. Maybe requires a little bit more attention in the mid lane, but he brings all of the things that were just highlighted. We've also seen him in solo lane do really well. Late game, he's going to be a menace. He just needs the farm, and mid, it's one of the best places to get that farm online.
Absolutely. So definitely some merits there. Jake with an early attempted invade on the Harpy. 1 level behind here, so you got to be careful about the re-engage from Inbound and Wowie. A couple shots going wide, so Jake escapes largely unscathed from that engagement. So maybe I like the mindset. And that's another maybe pivot point here in this game, Gore, as Inbound finds the stun onto Barracuda and then the disarm. And exactly what we see there is that this Chernobog is an interesting pick, but it's seen some play with Snoopy and E United, and has some good self-disengage if need be.
It seems like everybody is willing to pick up a fight here right now.
I know, I'm waiting for
a
something
little
to
more
happen.
curious about what's going to happen in the duo lane. I think everything in this lane screams aggression, except for the Chernabog to me. I think he can still do a lot of damage, and that is maybe case in point right there on the inbound. But it doesn't scream, early game, I'm going to kill you dead better than Rom kind of deal. So I'm curious to watch what Bear is going to be able to do. But if Jake keeps setting up kills like this, then eventually it's going to work out. Unfortunately, that pluck is going to be just off the mark.
Oh,
They
no.
might still be able to find the damage.
Oh, and the stun down onto Jake. One final shot will do it, and inbound's got it. It's the dash away from Vera, and there's another first blood over in the long lane. This time it's Obey that strike first.
And I think this is just going to do well for them. The Fafnir is going to just be not necessarily more aggressive than the Sobek, but safer aggression, right? He doesn't displace himself, much like we just saw Jake, in order to get it. If he misses the hammer, he misses the hammer. And also, Rom is going to have early pressure over here. I think this is something WoW should have had last game. I was kind of surprised they didn't. But I think this is going to normalize, right? I don't want to read too far into it the same way I didn't really want to read too far into the First Blood last game. I think it's going to be something that, as of right now, equals a little bit of pressure, but it's not going to evolve into anything too insane. I'm still more concerned about that mid lane than I am anything else for the Renegades, but I've seen it work before, so I can't cast doubts, especially onto someone like Venenu, who I think can make this set work as well.
I know, still so many questions around this set out of the mid lane. They still have to come to fruition. A bit different from Lasbra, not with the early level 2 gank that we so often see over to the long lane, so that's at least a small win for Obey Alliance, that not only do they survive the early onslaught, but they get a kill as well. That's not going to slow down the Renegades, though. They found a pluck onto Wowie, who immediately has to use the beads to stay alive. Well timed there. Despite the first blood gore, 1 level lead for both of the Renegades long laners.
It's just, I think,
Not much,
ridiculous.
but
I was going to say not a lot, and it's not really amounting to too much either. I want to see them maybe find something more pressure into the jungle, although right now we know there's nothing up, so we know that they can't necessarily find it. It just feels like they are farming a little bit better, but I wanted to see more of that. Just find a lot more plucks, I think, if you're Jake, and things will be fine.
Oh, and they're going to root him down as well. The shell buys some time, but it's not nearly enough. Barracuda will walk away with that kill. All of this skirmishing over in the long lane, and it's not on ganks or anything like that. It's just the two duo lanes going at it with one another now. Both hunters, at least involved, but Barracuda's the one with the kill.
And being able to get him online a little bit earlier, and like you said, they already had a little bit of a lead, so it's going to, again, leak out a little bit ahead of them. I think I used a little bit too much in that sentence, so I have to stop legally now. But it is that moment where he's just slightly ahead, right? Again, it's not amounting to too much. The big gold difference between these two teams mainly amounts to the first blood bounty that inbound got, and so that should help him out a little bit. And you can see finishing boots, starting another item, potentially a Stone of Binding there. I think he's going to be able to pick up, but if they can continue farming kills onto someone like Wowie over in the duo lane, then that's going to make him a little bit easier to transition into this mid game much further ahead, and maybe kind of take a big chunk of that gold lead away.
Wowie just a little bit behind here, likely reaches level 5 with that minion wave at any rate. Variety back on the Guan Yu though, Gore, and it's now going to get ulted on by Sino. The damage there, but well played by Variety to even give himself a chance of a turnaround there. Pulls Sino right beneath that tier 1 tower. Lasbra's here as well. But Sino and Ducky likely know that as the blue buffs have respawned, so they won't push any further, though Lasbra can maybe look for a little extra damage. But the Guan Yu was reckless abandon, Gore, in Game 1. And maybe the Renegades like that enough to go back to it here for Game 2.
I mean, it's been able to create a lot of space for him. Again, there were a lot of things that I questioned in Game 1, but admittedly he did a lot more questionable rotations, I think, from Variety throughout Game number 1. I think that's something that we'll have to keep our eye on if he does that again or not. But I do think he brings a lot of pressure, and that's sustained. I mean, it's just insane late game when you could go in, you chunk everybody to like 3/4 half HP, and then Guan Yu says, nope, and just tops everyone off again so they can stay into the fight. It's a little frustrating, I think, if you're Obey. So they'll have to maybe try to handle him a little bit more. So far, they've been keeping him low health, low mana over there on the right-hand side, so they haven't been too stressed about it.
I do like the pivot pick, though, for Ducky over onto this King Arthur. The Sun Wukong, of course, looked good. I mean, Ducky was the one we were really singing the praises of on Obey in Game 1, as there is a small engagement over in mid. Venenu, of course, a little extra safety dash his way, but Jake had not received the message, so he plucks in. has to use the lurking in the waters to disengage, but it's not enough. Wolfie from range with the snipe puts down Jake. Maybe miscommunication there as the Renegades lose another.
I mean, yeah, again, maybe just shaky. Granted, both of the kills, though, have happened onto Jake, which if you're going to have someone who dies early on, you probably want it to be your support, although you look back at Game 1, you ask, obey that, and they disagree very heavily. They don't want their support dying whatsoever. But that does, I guess, keeping them a little bit in control as of right now, and again, giving them a small gold lead that's now started to escalate into 2,000 in their favor. That's where you can start to build these leads, put a little bit of pressure on the mid, start to look for gold furies, although 8 minutes in, 7 minutes in, it's not going to be enough of Venenu. I think showcasing what I was, I literally wanted to talk about it. I'm glad he gets the kill there. He's going to bring a lot of damage late game. He might not have the same clear as a Thoth. He doesn't have the same long range ult as a Thoth, but he'll kill you if you leave yourself alone with him. And I think that's something that they're going to have to constantly be worried about here for Obey. Is there's essentially 2 junglers that are going to jump into the backline, or at least 2 assassin-esque style plays that are going to be able to get back there and delete Wolfie, delete Sino, or Wowie in any given team fight.
Mia's what? Warrior Tabai, a mace, and a warrior's blessing, and he just kind of evaporates Sino, though Sino is an assassin. Squishy, of course, in the early game, so if there is a target that's going to die that quickly, likely Sino, Wolfie, or Wowie at least. But still, massive damage nonetheless that obviously Sino wasn't prepared for. Heads-up play by Venenu. Now it's Obey Alliance trying to drive a little bit of the pressure on their own. Red buff respawn, stun down onto Ven. Ultimate from Sino connects, but Venenu has gone beneath the tier 2 tower. Where does Barracuda drop down into the remainder of this fight? It's right behind Sino, who still has a good bit of damage. Dash into the wall, immediately dash back out. Caltrips goes down, but Barracuda picks up the kill nonetheless.
I think Venenu, even if he was trying to get away and unsuccessfully does that, being able to get those tier 2 shots onto Sino makes that a lot easier to go 1-for-1 in terms of the trade, right? And he keeps himself going forward. Doesn't get the assist for it, even though he's the reason that Sino ends up dying. Either way, you're happy with that, I think, if you're set. And Venenu specifically, you've fallen a level behind. You're not too stressed about it. You're just waiting for your late game and all that carry potential that comes with being a late game set. And slowly but surely, he's going to continue closing that gap. Again, I'm looking at him more in comparison to, I think, where Sino is because of the impact he's going to be bringing. Both the jungler here, Lasber, and Vin level up over Sino, kind of keeping pace in terms of items. That's going to be dangerous as they start to transition into kind of the mid-game 3v3, especially with setup from Jake. I mean, he literally tosses you into a set in a Hebo. That is almost guaranteed death, I think, for everybody other than Inbound and maybe Ducky, if Ducky happens to be, for some reason, caught in the crossfire.
Yeah, not many I'd rather be tossed into less than those two. Almost certain death on the other end of it. Blue buff has respawned. Renegades answer in kind. It's a pluck over onto Sino, and wouldn't you guess it, right back into Lasber in Variety. Free kill there, but what are you going to trade out in return? Lasber's taken so much damage, the water carpet will keep him alive for the time being. Variety there for some body block and peel as well. So Renegades get a kill cleanly as of now, but they want a little bit more. Ducky gets plucked back in. Jake now has to tail whip his way out of 3 members of Obey. The snipe rips through the HP of awesome Jake. Venenu has joined the fray, though. He's picked up a kill onto Ducky in this set, flexing his muscles 10 minutes in.
I mean, POV, your Thoth, you hit 2 people with your ult, you still lose the fight. That's Wolfie's experience as of right now. He's still low health. I mean, honestly, Jake, this is not a good call, I think, from the Renegade, or from Obey, I should say, to go back in. That was...
They didn't leave.
I don't know what they were trying to do, and Wolfie, I don't know, you need to be careful. Yeah, you might still be near that tier 2, but if that pluck comes through, that is going to be death for you. I mean, I don't know why they decided to try and go back in there. Renegades still had enough health and obviously enough damage that they're just going to shred you. Obey handing over a few kills that probably shouldn't have happened there.
I'm wondering if Obey are maybe just thinking that the Renegades had completely left, or maybe just left 1 or 2 members behind, but in reality, everyone was still there, so unfortunate to say the absolute least. In Gore, some of these same storylines from Game 1 starting to form here again in Game 2. Barracuda, a couple of early kills on the board. That 2K gold lead completely wiped. Now Renegades back in the lead. Venenu, 3 kills on the board. Remember, it was massive damage from Ven and Barra in Game 1 that helped get Renegades the win. And they have set the stage perfectly yet again here with an early 6-3 kill lead.
And again, getting themselves back in the lead, as you had said, the gold now in their favor, the kills in their favor, levels in their favor, pretty much all around, although mid maybe still a little shaky just because it's a small lead, if any, there for Venenu. But the team fight stage is where things start to change up. You get a lot of damage from Wolfie, but it comes in bursts and spurts. You get a lot of sustained damage that has its bursts in Venenu. And so he's going to be able to get to the backline consistently, as we've already seen. And he's not really struggling anywhere else in the game right now. He's not worried about the clear. He's not worried about his pressure in mid.
Right.
He's able to stay afloat, no problem. And so any questions around this, especially now that he has Crusher, I think get eliminated. But Obey are going to start up the Gold Fury.
They sure are. The gold lead's still close enough that the Alliance don't feel like they're at that much of a disadvantage. Inbound gets looked at by a couple members of the Renegades over on the left side of the fight. Ducky now realizing Venenu does plenty of damage, is going to have to walk him away. An early Crusher will do that for you. We saw how much damage Venenu did with the Mace and the Warrior Tabi. He's got that full Crusher now, so he's going to be absolutely swinging. Maybe that's just a moment, though, Gore, where Obey pull out that Gold Fury. They figure maybe 1-2 members of the Renegades poke their head in and might find a pick.
Yeah, I mean, if you are able to get in there and maybe get aggressive the way Obey looked to get aggressive on the duo lane, you could find a pick, but the question is if you have the lockdown. Bear's close to the tower range.
Oh, look at that. Barracuda still takes a good bit of damage here and is going to have to soar right back down, and it's Ducky that gets Barracuda dropped on, but Barra will move into the wall and then right back out. So great disengage from Barra, obviously shining a light on why this Chernobog does get picked. I was wondering if Obey were going to start up this Gold Fury on their disengage there, but Sino without the ultimate. Gore, that's a lot of the engage now missing from Obey.
Yeah, they're going to
Oh my,
those in awkward spots,
Whoa!
especially like that. I mean, Sino's just
Whoa!
gone.
Oh my god, I missed it! I missed all the damage, but Sino evaporates from the battlefield. Ducky tanky enough to re-engage and actually slows down Variety a little bit. Wolfie maybe in range here to do some serious damage. Wowie looking for the snipes. Big cleave damage underneath the tier 1 tower. Looks like Venenu at this point just trying to be the one that peels for the rest of his team. So he'll go down. Wolfie picks up the kill. Variety hanging around. Does not have his ultimate, but Lazarus close by and he'll survive. And now Jake maybe on an island on his own.
Well, he'll be fine hanging out over here. He's got Barracuda just close enough by that he's going to be safe and nuzzled.
Crocodiles like
and the
islands.
beard that Bear has been growing over here as he's been going in Season 7. But, you know, again, just feeling safe. I think if there's anything that they have on their side of Renegades is that they do kind of feel comfortable. And the gold lead, very similar to last game. It's not really that expansive as of yet. You know, we saw Renegades really blow it up at the end of the game, and that's where it got big, was when they were able to finally win a big fight over and right, get a Fire Giant, and then start the pressure going. Otherwise, they were, what, 1,000 gold up for a majority of it? So I think they're in a very similar spot with similar amounts of control, stealing away jungle buffs, making sure you can't do gold furies. Anything and everything that is finding you any amount of control like that is going to be solid for them. And honestly, we've seen a lot from Venenu. We've talked a lot about his damage, but Lasbra, he's 0-0 and 5. Out of the 7 kills, he's been a part of 5 of them. And this man is slowly coming online. Hebo is not, again, necessarily picked because his level 3 is great. He's picked because his level 20 is the most ridiculous, or one of the most ridiculous that you can have. But that's not to say that here, especially in the mid-game, as he's starting to get some of his lifesteal online, whether he's going for the Bancroft first or a Typhon's first, either way, he'll be fine. It's going to be a lot of power that comes online. He's already got to do more on top of all that. He's hitting like a truck now. It's just going to get progressively bigger as a truck. Right now it's, you know, maybe like an F-150. Later it's an 18-wheeler that is going to be running you over.
F-150s aren't small. That's a big truck to start
They're
with.
not. No, that's why it's pretty hard already. Maybe it's more like I just had this Toyota non-brand named truck when I was growing up. Maybe it's more like that. It's still going to hurt.
One of those. The Gold Fury started up here by Obey Alliance. Lurking in the waters is Jake. Wowie will have take to the skies. Barracuda enters in kind. So both hunters out of the fight up in the air, but both of them will drop back down. Lasbra crushing waves his way in, but the Aegis keeps Wowie alive. But here come the dominoes. Renegades start to roll through the damage in the rest of this fight. Sino stays alive, but it's only a matter of time before maybe Variety can collapse upon him. It's a 3 versus 2 on the back end here. Venenu ulted up into the sky by Ducky, but once he drops down, Ducky does the same. A double kill for Venenu on the back end, and Sino, the last man living. Wait, is he gonna die? Oh!
Variety did it!
He takes him down. Variety's laughing. The big brain play. Tell him, Variety. Down goes Sino for the deicide.
That's why. Well, I mean, you just got to feel bad about that one. Like, there's not much you can say. That's a good. What's the opposite of a tilter, I guess, if you're the Renegades? Like, it's just a mood lifter. If you're Variety, you're insanely happy about that. You get a kill using thorns from 40 feet away, let's call it. There in lane.
Still smiling.
You're all the way. And you can't not. I mean, you've got to feel good about that. 7 of the 12 kills on the back of this Guan Yu. It's been treating him really well. And this is the first time, I feel like, since we've seen Variety on this team, that I'm seeing a lot of cohesion from top to bottom. That it feels like Variety has truly integrated into it, and that is a good feeling to have, I think, for every Renegades fan out there.
You know what it is, Gore? We're gonna step away from any meaningful analysis. It is purely quarantine beard advantage, because that's where you got my mind going. Everyone on Renegades at least rocking something. And Obey Alliance a little bit behind in that department, so maybe that's the biggest differentiator here. Variety just had simply a better beard than Sino on that small engagement. Now he's going to get a double stun, a double knock-up. Talk about a combo here from the Renegades, and Variety picks up an easy one onto Sino.
Well, you said it, Dave. It's beard diff. Variety's beard, you shave it off, it weighs as much as Ducky does at that point, right? I mean, that's where it's coming forward. Either way, it's looking good for them right now. At 4-0-4, good aggression. Sino is 2-6. Last time I think I highlighted it was inbound. That was 0-6 on the Emir, not having the cleanest game. Right now, it really is just coming down to the fact that the jungler here for Obey is not able to get into these fights, and he's not able to stay alive when he is.
Whoa! Here comes Barracuda right in behind Wolfie, deleted is the Thoth, and Ducky will fall to a similar fate as well. This one is spiraling out of control quickly. All the damage pouring into Obey. Lasbra will finish off inbound now, and it's the right side Phoenix being looked at. Gore, we are 18 minutes into this game. A right side Phoenix is being sieged down. Lasbra with the double kill. There's still so many towers available, but they're going to rampage through Wowie as well. Can they walk in and end this game? 18 and a half minutes in, you got to be kidding me. The Renegades, in potentially sub 20 minutes, walk away with game 2.
I mean, they're looking to try and run it here. You're looking for one of the fastest games. In fact, Dave, I'm going to go ahead and call it out. It is the fastest game of Phase 2 there. It didn't beat the year where he saw Sanguine beat E United in under 18 minutes. But the one that was fastest, Space Station were able to beat Ghost in a 19-minute game a few weeks ago in Week 8. But that was insanely well done. And just kind of out of nowhere. I mean, they just dropped the ball there. It came in like it was nothing for the Renegades. Well played from them, and it's just the damage, everything spiraled out of control.
It's one of those, you don't take a fight by the FG. If you lose, the enemy team's going to get it. I guess don't fight by your base 18 and a half minutes in, because if you lose, the enemy team's just going to win the whole thing. So fantastic here from the Renegades. Got to be happy if you're one of them or one of their fans. That wraps up this day in the SPL. We'll take a quick break and round things out on the desk.
Chosen, I don't think they see it. Like in a trailer, no need for flavors. Cause I'll be laughing when I'm Justin Bieber's neighbor. Always time to second guess, weighs heavy on my chest. But the dreams I have, they stay alive. Cause it's ride or die. I've been dreaming, maybe I'm sleeping. Losing my teeth, maybe I'm flying for no reason. I've been dreaming, what I believe in. I will get there soon, that's more than just a feeling. Yeah, I've been dreaming. Washing the bands, working the weekend. Thinking about how I remember all these feelings. Right in this moment, I'm making no man. Riding on this damn, won't stop until I own it. Always time to second guess, weighs heavy on my chest. But the dreams I have, they stay alive. Cause it's ride or die. I've been dreaming, maybe I'm sleeping. Losing my teeth, maybe I'm flying for no reason. I've been dreaming, what I believe in. I will get there soon, that's more
Welcome back to the SPL. What a last game that one was. It gave us everything. We got the variety Thorns kill standing on the Caltrops. We got the fastest game ever of game number 2 for this one as well. And Renegades come out on top 2-0 over Obey in relatively convincing fashion. And Myth, for me, what's standing out in all of this is that Venenu, he feels like Sasuke with the Sharingan. He's copying everybody's main pick.
Look, man, I'm not going to let you get it twisted. Not here on broadcast. That is Venenu Kakashi of the Sharingan. He's stealing Hurriwin's Yanis. He stole Paul's set. He took Dardez's Hera. He took Shinto's Thoth. Like, this man is all over the place. This is Zabuza Arc Prime mode, and he's popping off.
He's making all of it work, isn't he, and playing it all well. I mean, you and I, we were like, this has got to be the Hebo going to him. No, he pulls out the set, and I think the most impressive play isn't even all the kills that he got, but there's the time where Sino ulted him, and he blinks underneath his own tier 2 and pulls Sino there using Sino's ult. Venenu clearly comfortable in this. This was not an on-a-whim pick. He knows how to play this set and make it work, and here, perhaps the highlight of it all, Variety using the Caltrops to get the Thorns kill. We absolutely love it.
Man, if only we could have got the cam there from Variety. I'm sure my man was grinning ear to ear, cheesing on the camera. I mean, it's hard to break down games like this because it was so absolutely one-sided. That was the fastest game of Phase 2, and somehow Sino still finds the time to die 7 times. Variety goes undying. Barabog, I'm going to say it again, Barabog picks up a 5-0 slash line. It's just clean across the board, and it's a brand new look from the Renegades. We don't see Lazron Hebo often. We don't see this set mid from Ben, but they make it work in such convincing fashion.
Yeah, Venenu copied this technique at a dark alley years ago, pulls it out now with complete mastery, ready to go, dude. This is a new Renegades team. This is why we've been kind of like high on this team, wondering who would be the ones down there in that bottom 3 stuck. And it looks like Renegades are creating space now with this win, getting some breathing room between them and Obey and E United. And we expect the United to be continuing to grab some wins later on. But this Renegade team, you got to be worried if you're lining up against them.
Yeah, Obey decided that they might want to creep up just a little bit, and Renegades just kind of stiff arms them down there and says, "No, no, we're gonna maintain our not bottom 2 slot." And man, they're looking good. If we could see that version of Renegades every single week, this top end from them, we wouldn't be worried about their standings. They'd be up there with PK. They'd be on that same rise because the level of play that they brought today was so incredibly high. If they could just narrow this variance just a little bit, this team would be an absolute threat in the league.
This raises our standards for them, right? We know what they can do, but they have to continually show it to us because we know they're capable of it now. And Venenu, the guy we've been spinning this whole desk gassing up, is the one that is standing by with Gore for the post-game interview.
That's right, I've got Venenu here, and I'm going to start with maybe the easy one that comes out of it all. I mean, Game 2 is an abrupt end. It seems like you guys have a lot of control. How was everyone feeling coming out of that one?
Yeah, we're all feeling good. We're happy with how we played. I think a big thing for us is we just got to keep our consistency up and show what we did today and just keep it going through.
I mean, if you can keep that up, then that looked amazing for you. What was it really that you changed, specifically from like Game 1 to Game 2, that made things transition so much easier for you? I mean, it seemed like Game 2 was just a walk through the park.
I think we just took a different type of style of comp that we wanted to try and use that we don't usually play, so catch them off guard. And we wanted to see how it would work, and it ended up working out really well for us, so we're happy with that. So we'll see what we can do going forward with that.
Well, we've got the highlights for it. We have to talk about this a little bit. I mean, bringing in the set and mid, not something we get to see too often, although we have seen it before. What inspired you to pick this up, and also, how did you do so much damage? You deleted everyone.
Shoutouts to Paul. You know, I just got to watch a bunch of VODs and learn from him. I mean, he was the one who brought it out originally, so yeah, I mean, glad that I could try to pick it up and contest with him.
Well, it absolutely looked good while you were playing it. Otherwise, I mean, right now, I got to look it up as to who you're going up against next. I think you technically have a Ghost Gaming matchup. You're also going to be going up against Space Station here in the near future. So, you know, going from Obey to those two teams, what are your minds on moving forward?
I mean, just taking one team at a time. We got to do our prep for Ghost and do all that stuff. We got to work on our consistency. I think that's been the biggest like downfall of us. So, we have like a Variety or Harry with us now, so he's been a good factor with us, and we're happy to keep working forward. We see a lot of potential in the future with us. Just got to get there and keep our consistency up for sure.
That's right, man. It looked awesome today. Congratulations once again on your win. Thanks for stopping by and talking to me. But we're going to go back to the desk now to go ahead and close out the day.
Well, I am a big Venenu fan and glad to see that dude happy after getting a big win here today. Big things being expected for Renegades, but a tough slate coming up for them with those matches that you mentioned, Goremizer coming up for them. So we'll see if they can find those wins there. Myth, we're coming near now to the end of another day. Ghost get their 2-0 win. I don't think that's much of a surprise, though it did go later. As you pointed out, clearly United were hanging with them but couldn't win it. And then now Renegades finding the 2-0 here up against Obey, a 4-0 day, where at least in the first set the team we expected to win, but I did not expect Renegades to come out of this set against Obey so cleanly.
So cleanly, so quickly, so confidently. I mean, there's so many lees we could drop, adjectives for how Renegades handled that one. Maybe clinically should be dropped in there as well. And now the standings kind of reflected. Renegades have created a decent amount of space there. United and Obey have to fight so hard for any singular win if they don't want to be in this bottom 2 slot, which is going to be hugely impactful moving into Worlds.
And you saw on the schedule there, I want to make sure we cover it one more time, those PK games have been postponed here at this point. So just keep your eye on when we'll be able to get those games actually played, just they're not going to be able to play here this weekend. But still, that means that there are still some excellent sets going to be coming up. So make sure that you do tune in here for us tomorrow. We'll be devoting all our attention to the one SPL set that's happening, bringing you 2 sets worth of quality in that one. So again, appreciate your production for bringing us the show. Thank you all for watching. Make sure you're back here with us tomorrow for plenty more of the SPL.